Hey, what's up, Soul Warriors? Welcome to Recovery Soul Food. Today I've got an amazing guest planned for you, and I am dumbfounded, in all honesty, that I get to sit in the kind of greatness that we're all going to get to sit in for the next 30, 40 minutes. Leigh Steinberg is a premier sports agent. I mean, one of the most successful in our entire country, in the entire industry. He's an amazing man full of amazing courage, but he's a real man, a man who has seen his own darkness and done what it takes to come out into the light. I love one of the things that I heard him say in a lot of the research that I've done and the ways I've gotten to know him through media. He says, I was hardwired to change the world. And I believe it in this man. And I urge you to grab a pen and a piece of paper so that you can take notes, because this is an amazing resource to our community. Mr. Lee Steinberg is willing to share his experience and his blueprint in every way that he's reached success with us. And as so many beautiful, amazing podcasts have interviewed him very recently, I wanted to make sure that we got as much out of this amazing human resource as possible. So I'm going to structure it a little different. We're going to talk about information, inspiration, and motivation. So without further ado, let's welcome Mr. Lee Steinberg. Hey, Lee, how are you?
Hi, LC. I'm doing fine.
It's great to meet you. Sorry about that intro. Good thing about editing is my assistant put it in as your name. It was someone else's name, so I'll fix that. No worries. But thanks for being here, man. You've been such an amazing inspiration as of late and to the recovery community. And I thought that was just it doesn't surprise me about you. What I've learned about your personality is you always want to turn around and scream to the world, this is how I made it. Let me show you how. How did you get that way?
I was raised by a father who had two basic core values. One was treasure relationships, especially family. And the second was to try to make a positive impact in the world and help people who can't help themselves and try to relieve pain where you could. So, um, uh, my brothers and I sat around a dinner table where what was stressed over and over again is how can you be of service to other people? What
Wow.
can you do to target major problems in the world? And the ancillary was, he would say, when you're waiting for someone to fix the problem, someone to take action, someone to recognize the condition and solve it, and
Yeah.
you keep waiting for the amorphous they or them,
Yes.
older people, political figures. He'd say, you could wait forever, son. The they is you. You are the
Wow.
they. So we're all responsible in our own way to make a difference. It can be as simple as parenting well, and it could be as
Mm-hmm.
major as taking on racism or domestic violence or sex trafficking or the environment or bullying. And uh, but that's really how I judge myself. Have I been able to heal suffering and make a difference in the world?
Yeah, that's really, really amazing, because that's the type of podcast we have here on Recovery Soul Food, is to try to do just that, is to try to relieve that suffering and empower people to be able to see that they have something bigger within themselves than that, that coping mechanism of addiction. And, you had seemed like you had such a strong foundation that this question that I'm going to ask you now is going to be fairly probably easy for you. But throughout not only in your childhood, how you were raised, but in being around athletes from all spectrums of age, what have you learned about how important environment is to a positive mindset?
I think it's critically important. So, for example, to the extent that you surround yourself with people who are positive, supportive, upbeat, and inspiring, as opposed to people who are negative and toxic, it can change your whole outlook. So, we're very responsive as human beings to our environment, and it's why it's so critical to try to surround yourself with people who can see the best in you and help stimulate that.
Yeah.
And because look, ultimately the glass half empty, half full. So having a basic sense of optimism, an understanding that things can get better, things will work out, there's light at the end of the tunnel, is
Yes.
critically important in terms of recovery.
Absolutely. Absolutely, and wonderfully said. Do you think I came to believe around year 1 or 2 in my recovery. I'm in year 8 right now, and I came to believe earlier that we all had a purpose, and it helped me with that. And do you think that you'd say that's your purpose of being able to recognize the good? Because you've got to come across some athletes that maybe aren't necessarily growing up in the most positive environment, but you're able to see the best. And that, I think that's probably a spiritual gift.
Well, I think the most important skill, LC, is the ability to listen.
Mm,
You can create enough trust in another human being that you can get them to peel back the layers of the onion, and instead of giving you surface responses, really lay out what their
yeah.
fundamental values and priorities are.
Mm,
And instead of dealing generically with people, you can understand someone's deepest anxieties and
yeah.
fears and their greatest hopes and dreams. If you can put yourself in their heart and mind and see the world the way the other person sees it, then you can navigate your way through life gracefully.
Absolutely. Isn't that, just the epitome of the whole yin and yang, the balance? We see so many people, and a lot of us in active addiction have experienced people that can have the ability to see and have you be able to tear that back and be open, and then they use it for bad. But you are the epitome of someone who sees and gathers this information all in the spirit of how can I better serve you? And that's an amazing example. We don't see that in a person all the time. So thank you for sharing that. That gift. That's a huge gift, I believe. And so what do you tell someone when you see, say, a young man or a young woman in an environment? What's your number one advice to them when you have a sports meeting and you see that they've got that balance of influence? What's your advice to them?
Well, to try to stimulate the best in them and
Mm,
the most positive values, and to understand the opportunity for athletes to be role models and
mm,
to trigger imitative behaviors. So if you
yeah.
have the heavyweight champion Lennox Lewis in boxing cut a public service announcement that says real men don't hit women, it can do more to trigger behavioral change in rebellious adolescents than
Oh,
a
yeah.
thousand authority figures ever could.
You're so
So
right.
it's understanding the power of sports and the power of profile to try to make a profound difference, because people will tune out experts, they tune out their parents, they tune out law enforcement, they tune out teachers, but a big macho athlete can deliver a message like Steve Young and Oscar De La Hoya: prejudice is foul play,
Yes.
and make a difference in the world. So I try to encourage them to use their voice in a positive way to try and influence other people.
That's amazing, to give some type of accountability and responsibility and introduce a bigger purpose. And a lot of the studying that I've done into that's what really drew me in, as it seemed, this program that you set up for your athletes and I kept seeing that same theme is that purpose, you know,
Well,
create that purpose, find your purpose.
what we ask them to do is to retrace their roots and go back to
Mm,
the high school community, set up a scholarship fund, or work with the church or Boys and Girls Club. Then go back to the university community and bond with the alums. So someone like Troy Aikman repaid his scholarship to UCLA and then gave him another $1 million. And then at the pro level, we challenged them to find some cause in their own life they'd like to tackle, and then to put together a charitable foundation with the leading business figures, political figures, and community leaders in that city to help execute a program. So that could be the running back work done, putting the 175th single mother and her family into the first home they'll ever own by making a down payment and moving them in. And so it's athletes changing lives, and also recognizing their own responsibility to be more than an athlete, but to consider themselves as a citizen and someone with their own responsibility to make an impact.
Absolutely. And I think that having that, that purpose always, it seemed to me, and I've seen it as a common theme throughout, people that have reached a bit of recovery years and healing and maturity. They often say that purpose is what pulled them through the times they wanted to give up. And, I come around to your big, I guess, moment of clarity as you are going through your complete downfall there. I've got a couple of questions surrounding that time. But one of them, I guess, since we're talking about purpose, is, did you feel like you still knew your purpose when you were in your darkest days and you would get to it at some other time? Or did you start losing faith in everything at that time?
It wasn't that I lost faith in everything. I was so confused and disoriented because of drinking too much that I lost touch with my business, my family, my every aspect of my life. And finally, I'm sitting in Los Angeles, moving back with my parents, and I'm sitting on my deceased father's bed. And my only thought in the world was, where can I find more vodka? I had been reduced to that level. And I did have an epiphany, which was, I'm not a starving peasant in Sudan or Darfur. I don't have the last name Steinberg in Nazi Germany in the 1930s. I don't have cancer. What excuse do I have to not fulfill those admonitions of being a great father, of being a good friend, a good son, a friend to people in times when they need it, a friend when it might cost you something to be a friend. Yeah. And then what am I contributing back to the world? And it was clear that that alcohol had become my number one motivation. And I had just lost touch with all the fundamental principles and values that were important. So, but you had to have a belief that somehow there was light at the end of the tunnel, because destruction and detritus is so heavy, financial debt and trade relationships, and the detritus was so amazing that somewhere in you have to get a sense that, if you walk into a barn and there's a pile of pony poop or that there's a pony in there somewhere. You just have to have a fundamental belief. And then there is help out there. There are unique fellowships with 12-step programs that and then I learned a very simple formula, which was to surrender to the fact that I was powerless over alcohol, that my life had become unmanageable, and finding that fellowship and finding a home group and getting a sponsor and working the 12 steps in order, and then being of service to other people. So instead of intellectualizing why a higher power, somehow there's no God, if there was a God, well, why would he create all these problems? Getting into an argument about
Yeah.
every aspect of the program I was
Yeah.
working. I just followed it. I felt like I was going back to college or law school, and I had access to some really brilliant people. And as much as I'd given advice to, presidents of the United States, to people who own sports teams, to all sorts of people, when it came to this area, I was absolutely ignorant, and I needed to go back to school. And so I
Yeah.
listened to what some really bright men said, and one of the things they said is, look, if it takes you an hour a day to do recovery activities, and that gives you the freedom the other 23 hours to live the way
Mm.
that you want to do it, isn't that a pretty good trade?
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. That's an amazing story, and you're right. It just seems like when you really, really get it and you finally get it, because there's those times that you want it and you step out and relapse and you come back and you come back. But when that moment is where you finally just surrender and say, that's it, there's a change. You've explained it so well that you had to just surrender and absorb all the knowledge. I feel like so much of my recovery, even in year 8, is doing this podcast, because I get to meet some amazing people with amazing ideas, and I just get to absorb that and then give it back. And it's such an amazing gift. I've heard you speak a lot in a lot of the things that you've talked about, and having a vision and visualization, I hear, has been a very big key in a lot that you've done in your life. Even seems like from a small child you were able to kind of visualize. What does a Lee Steinberg visualization look like these days?
Um, it looks like um, the ability to see the future and to understand where the environment, for example, in climate change, would take us as a society,
Mm,
where racism and political discord would take us, and
yeah.
to try to push my mind into solution.
Mm,
So it's a matter of what can we do. So the environment, the Sporting Green Alliance, where I took sustainable technology in um, recycling, resurfacing, water, solar, and integrated it into stadium, arena, and practice fields to drop carbon emissions and energy costs, and to transform those places into teaching platforms so millions of fans can go and see a waterless urinal or solar panel.
wow.
Goes to how can I be of service to people who are out there still struggling? Because,
Mm, mm,
it was just 12 years ago that I was in that situation. I
yeah.
always consider myself in terms of sobriety as a bun in the oven just cooking.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's critical to always be conscious of the fact that my brain has been altered. That
Yes.
no safe way to ever consume alcohol. But look, if the only thing I can't do to be happy in life is drink alcohol, it leaves a whole massive potpourri
Yeah.
of fun activities and all the rest of it. So instead of visualizing this as giving up this critical substance, just
Yeah.
visualize this as unlocking the key to happiness. I mean, look at it this way: if you told someone that behind door one was legal consequences, arrests, loss of reputation, uh, frayed family relationships, and physical problems. And behind door two was spiritual happiness and great relationships with people and career happiness. Who would willingly pick door one? But what
Right.
happens is that brain for we who are alcoholic gets changed. So
Yeah.
the amygdala, the old lizard brain that's responsible for breathing and eating and defecating and making love and all the rest of it, conflates the need for alcohol and sends cravings out that override your prefrontal lobe. And the
Yeah.
only way to stop that from happening is to be separated from that substance long enough that the cravings abate and they stop and you can get into a routine. And there happens to be a really good solution for all this, and it's that unique fellowship.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think I often like to, because I do this in my own life, especially in early recovery, when the cravings would come, instead of trying to just hold them back, like, I'm holding back a dam of water with my hands, I actually started asking them questions, and I would look around and investigate what was surrounding that trigger. Did I just get a phone call? Was I angry? Was I happy? Did I see something to celebrate? Is there a thought that comes with that? And so I just started kind of almost making friends with them to see, like, okay, well, this is like a little message coming, that this is a place I need to pull some steps on, or fellowship about, or talk to someone about. And it almost became like a fun, behavior study. Because I also, we have in common that I heard you say once that, you know success comes in studying human behavior. And when you can anticipate, like you've talked about before already, they kind of anticipate someone's greatness and how to bring that out, and what they may need, it does a lot for your recovery, because you're able to kind of do yourself that way too.
Well, one
So
thing I heard from a podium that helped me was the concept of halt, which is if you're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired,
yeah,
that shouldn't be an excuse in each area to trigger drinking.
right,
And so much of what I heard. Here's the thing: the fact that I've come to this point in the journey, because it's a journey that will be the rest of my life. The fact I've come to this was a function of many, many, many other people helping me.
mm,
And so, I didn't do this alone. I did it with the help of a amazingly supportive fellowship. I did it with the help of all sorts of people in my life. And
amazing.
so, it takes a village.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess that kind of leads into, our next question, and you might have already kind of answered it too, but I always equate that I had to have my one thing when I was in recovery, that one thing that I was able to bring me back to center when I wanted to go with that easier option to use. And my one thing was my belief that I just didn't want to be a hypocrite for my preteen son and tell him not to do something if I wasn't walking it out. Did you have a one thing that you could cling to during that time of early recovery?
Well, again, being a good father and having a strong relationship with my kids. Kids don't apply for life.
Sure.
They don't send out
That's
an
right.
application that says, I would like to be born. We
Right.
make the decision to bring them on this planet. And so the
Yeah.
least that you owe them is stability and judgmental love
Yeah.
and that. And so I brought those three kids, was part of the process, the
Yeah.
easy part of bringing those three
Yeah.
um, uh, to life. And I certainly owed them that. So when people talk about a comeback, I always say, look, my comeback is maintaining sobriety for 11 plus years. My comeback is being a good father and a good friend.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the fact that I
Absolutely.
could be career successful again, well, that's a cherry on top.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because you really, really reached the pinnacle of success. I'm sure that there were people wondering what's happening to Lee. It wasn't like you had really almost bottomed out at the time that you first began, dabbling in alcohol. But I guess that all of that, I think this was one of the questions that was surrounding that I really wanted to ask you about, because I've heard you tell the story about all the things that were happening in your life between the bankruptcies and the mold and losing the homes and your children being diagnosed with, an eye disease. did you feel like that it's part of the male culture to really shoulder, or even part of the genetic makeup, to not be able to be that knight in shining armor? And, you know, did you feel, I guess, comfortable to reach out when you felt like you were kind of starting to lose it all? Or is that something that we should be mindful of
No,
today?
the truth of the matter is I felt responsible. That
Oh, wow.
I couldn't save my kids from blindness.
Mm,
I couldn't
man.
provide a household. I couldn't save my father from a long death from cancer. And
Yes.
it was probably grandiosity, but I always grew up with a sense of responsibility. So I should have been able to do these things. And I felt like Gulliver
Mm,
in the with the Lilliputian surrounding, tethered down on the beach,
mm,
helpless with the Lilliputian sticking forks in me. I felt like powerless. And what working a program enabled me to do was to get the power back, but in a more
yes.
realistic sense. So I've seen people in my meetings walk through the death of a child, cancer, a whole group of things. So it was never anything in my work life that bothered. I walk into the office every day expecting that there'll be some, no matter how well we plan, no matter how well we've done, something unseen is going to come up to upset the apple cart and make it problematic. But in my private life, I thought somehow I could protect my kids and my father and my marriage and our house. And the fact that I was failing at all that just overwhelmed me. You know, when they do that experiment where the doctor comes in and shocks the dog,
Mm-hmm.
eventually the doctor just comes to the door and the dog rolls over. And I
Yeah.
gotten to that point where I just wanted to check out. It wasn't a matter of not wanting to live. I wanted to live, but it was like,
Yeah.
God, what's next? Is it going to be river of blood, locust,
Yeah.
flies?
Yeah. I completely understand.
Which of Moses's plagues is going to be visited next?
Well,
But
yeah.
again, it was a loss of proportionality and perspective.
Yeah. And do you think that you are stronger and say more spiritually strong, or have more faith now, having been through all that, than maybe you did then? Or would you just wish that you never went through it?
I wish I never went through it, but I do hear people say that it was the best thing that ever happened to them. But I had what I thought were pretty solid values, and I understood the need to govern my own behavior and to make amends to people. Some of what happened in that program, I already knew, but I had to get back to it.
Yeah.
And it, but I do feel like, among other things, I understand how easy it is to become homeless.
Mm,
If I had not had generous friends, and parents that still had a house, what would I have done?
yeah.
And so it gives you empathy when I see people standing out there with a sign or a cup. Um, I have empathy for them because they're but for great
Yeah.
friends in a program walk me.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great perspective to have, to always keep yourself grounded. What I wanted to ask, because you are a highly, highly successful man in many, many ways. A lot of us that have had some recovery time and are moving towards living in our own passions. I know would be interested, as much as I'm interested in, what is your formula for a successful life, be it business, your recovery, and purpose, or just your personal daily formula of how you're going to be successful in that day?
So sobriety's first. Without sobriety, nothing else can function normally. So sobriety's first, and belief in a higher power, and then family. So it's family, service, and then what can I do to help others who are still suffering? Professionally, it's how to work with athletes and other people to make a difference. And we have programs that teach younger agents how to be an agent. We have programs that teach people. I've got a commitment to bring the next generation along. I target key issues like concussion.
Good.
Because you can't represent people in collision sports without trying to bring awareness and maintenance and cure to brain damage. It's again a real happiness and excitement about being alive, and the fact that that my relationships with my kids are great, and
Great.
being a father, and then the fact that our business ended up doing what I traditionally had done, which is to represent top athletes, to have a Patrick Mahomes, to have star players that have charitable foundations. It's enough.
Do you think that it's your true connection with your spiritual gift of connection with human beings that really makes you such a great agent? And you think it's your ability to be a great friend and even father that makes you a great agent?
Yes. And I think, but again, let's go back to what I said before. I think the most important study in life is psychology.
Mm-hmm.
You can understand what motivates other human beings, why they act the way they do. If you can anticipate those actions, if you can see the world through their eyes, then you can do every part of what's important, from parenting to being a good friend to being someone that can make a difference in the world.
So does making a say $100 million negotiation make you more nervous, or maybe having to stand up and share about sobriety? Like, what makes you more comfortable in the world right now? I mean, can you do one just like that and the other gives
No,
you any anxiety?
I'm pretty comfortable. You can't get to sobriety unless you break denial.
Mm.
And unless it's the disease that says you don't have a disease.
Yeah.
So being an alcoholic will mislead you because you think everyone else is being unreasonable and confronting you for your behavior, and you don't have the problem; they have the problem.
Yeah.
But once you confront denial and you realize this is your circumstance, and it's also a realization that we have a tendency, human beings, to look at social media and other presentations of other people's lives and assuming that they are all wonderful, and that other people don't have financial problems, other people don't have health problems, other people don't have parenting problems or relationship problems. Just
Yep.
me. And
Yeah.
to compare yourself to a glamorized edition, people don't go on Facebook or Instagram and post that they are having a horrible time.
Right.
So the point is, it's a real trap to continually compare yourself to other people, and you have to make the assumption that when I've said to an audience, did you ever wonder how you got here to this specific situation with these specific problems, there's commonality that we all have. If you can just get people, men don't share so easy. Okay. So I spent 47 years talking to a few women, but a lot of men. And so, you know, someone has cancer, they're walking down the street, you ask them how they're doing, and they say, oh, great. You know, great. You've got to cut below that to reach the commonality in people, and you've got to get a clear vision of where someone else is. And it's easy. The remarkable thing about the fellowship I talked about is that adults actually share their deepest anxieties and fears, their worst history with each other, and can laugh over it.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Well, I want to just ask you my last question as we're coming up here on our time. I really want to, well, it'll be a two-part question. Who inspires you these days? And what is your message to the still suffering addict who's there on the street, who might be watching this, be ready to make a choice?
So I get inspired by political figures, by folks that I've met in this journey who cope with all sorts of problems. Look, if you are out there discouraged, depressed, despondent because of problems with alcohol or addictive substances, don't give up hope. Because there is light at the end of the tunnel. It can get better, notwithstanding how challenging it is, how much destruction that you feel you have, how many problems you have. There is a better way. And if you will just reach out to people, there are amazing people waiting to help you. But find a 12-step program, find a unique fellowship, work those steps, and gradually, incrementally, your life will get better. And if you're sincere and diligent in trying to recover, it will work for you. And again, you can rejoin those of us on the sunny side of the street.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you so much. That's a very inspiring and hope-filled way to put it. And also while being very realistic, because you said gradually over time, and that's the truth. It's not an overnight thing. So, Mr. Lee Steinberg, it's been absolutely outstanding to get to spend this time with you. I was very excited to be able to sit in greatness, because you are a man that inspires me in many ways as an entrepreneur, you know, just as a motivational speaker. You've got a true gift for people and relationships. So I thank you.
Congratulations on your 8 years. It's a noble accomplishment. And thank you so much for doing this podcast, which can offer hope and resilience to lots of people. So I admire you.
Thank you so much. All right. Well, Mr. Lee, we'll be looking for you to make your next deal and looking for you all over the place. And thank you so much for giving your hope and light to us.
My pleasure.
We'll see you soon. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Mr. Lee Steinberg is he's a hero. He's, you know, not only a legendary sports agent. He's not only a best-selling author, but he is a man who is living in his spiritual gift. So many times we think our spiritual gifts are supposed to be cut and dry. We think they are supposed to be things maybe that we are already know, you know, things like, I don't know, seeing the future or hearing God or a power of prayer or prophecy or speaking. But, you know, we can go deeper. And the example that Mr. Lee Steinberg really shines for us is the need for us as human beings to go deeper with one another, to go past that surface level and connect on a deeper soul level. I see Mr. Lee Steinberg as, a soul warrior, because he is out in the world affecting people with the authenticity of his soul. And that's important, and it's a spiritual gift. So don't be so quick to count yourself out when you're out in the world trying to compare what your gifts are to someone else's. Your gifts will shine through in the passions and the things that inspire you. So become still, become intrigued by you and what you feel brings you joy and peace and fulfillment and gratitude. Because what we know is that in giving back to others and serving a community where you feel led to be, that creates an inner peace that will carry you through the most dark times that you can possibly think of in your life. Regardless of anything, today is we have the power to choose, and we do not have to use or relapse. But on the chance that someone does, do not buy into the lies of guilt and shame. Do not hear that you've thrown everything away and start talking yourself out of just jumping back up and getting back at the business of living your best life. Success leaves clues, everyone. And Mr. Lee Steinberg is one of the most open guests and most well spoken and put together guest that is so successful and so open and willing to share that as a blueprint. I believe that if we start looking for the messages that is within each and every person that we meet and every situation that we go through, that we can actually grow through those things and grow into our best and most amazing selves. So let's have a hand for our brother Lee Steinberg and just thank him for being a human recovering out loud in this world and coming and sharing his wisdom and light with us here on Recovery Soul Food. Hey, consider becoming a sponsor of Recovery Soul Food Podcast, either monthly or by sponsoring an episode. If you want to do that, then go to our anchor page, which is anchor.fm/recovery soul food. And you can pick from any of the subscription packages that you would like. It would really help us out and keep the podcast going. Also, there's no need to know if you can't monetarily support the podcast. You can always do us an amazing service by leaving us a 5-star review and on iTunes and Spotify and even iHeart Radio. Subscribe to the channel, like the videos, comment there in the videos. If there's a topic that you want me to begin to cover in this season, or a guest that you think would be perfect for the show, or if you want to be a guest on the show, then go there and contact us. You can message us and everything through the anchor.fm/recovery soul food. And finally, if you have ever wondered if hypnotherapy can help you in your healing journey, then this is the greatest place to be, because our friends and partners, Breakthrough Hypnotherapy, is offering the Recovery Soul Food podcast listener a full free hypnotherapy session. That means you will not only get the consultation with the consultation session of 15 minutes, but you will get a full free session after that just by telling them that LC and Recovery Soul Food sent you. So make sure that you head over to breakthrough.com. All right, till next time, everybody, we're going to see Mr. Alex of Substance, a movie making genius that has turned making short documentary style films about addiction and recovery into an amazing art. Never fear. Alex is going to be right here. Recovery Soul Food next weekend. And after that, we've got the beautiful, the amazing Dora Gosling of the Soberoso podcast. So until then, you guys go and follow of Substance on Instagram, and the Soberoso on Instagram as well. I can't wait to see you. Until next time, you guys get up from your give up and create a life you love. You got the power to do it. I'm LC. See you soon.